Hi, in this video we're going to work on the chapter 7 in the Spotlight. There's only one, so we'll only have this one video on chapter 7. So Dr. LeClaire gives a set of exams during the semester in her chemistry class. At the end of the semester, she drops each student's lowest test score before averaging the scores. She's asked you to write a program that will read a student's test scores as input and calculate the average with the lowest score dropped. So the following pseudocode shows the steps for calculating the average of the set of test scores with the lowest score dropped. Calculate the total of the scores, find the lowest score, subtract the lowest score from the total. This gives the adjusted total. Divide the adjusted total by number of scores minus 1. This is the average. You decide to create a class named Grader with a constructor that accepts a double array of test scores. The Grader class will have a method named getLowestScore that returns the lowest score in the array, and a method named getAverage that returns the average of the test scores with the lowest score dropped. Here's the UML for this. We have one attribute or field, test scores, it's a double, and then three methods. First one is the constructor, then we have the getLowestScore and getAverage. So let's go ahead and get this going here. I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code for Java and open the folder. Now in this particular case, since I only have one in the Spotlight, I'm just going to do chapter 7 and not create a separate folder for this. And then I'll have to tell it that I trust it. Do that every time. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this thing over here because I'm not going to be using that. And then new file. And this is going to be called Grader.java. So on this one then, we're going to have our public class Grader. And our private double, it's going to be an array, so we have the brackets on there, test scores. Then our constructor, we're going to pass in the array. We call it score array. So then in here, we get it's readjusted here. There's test scores. It's going to be equal to a new double in brackets score array dot length. Okay, everything quit being underlined on there. That helps out. So then what we're going to do is a for loop for int index equals 0, index less than score array dot length, index plus plus. So in here what we're going to do is test scores index is going to be equal to scores array index. Okay? So we can copy what's in here. It should be score array. Actually, yeah, score array. There we go. So we're going to just take the data that we passed in and put it into an array in here that we're going to be using as our in our class. Okay, so we got that taken care of. Let's go down and public double get lowest score. We don't need to pass anything in on this. We're going to have our local variable lowest. We're going to set lowest equal to test scores 0 for the first one. Best way to do it on these. We'll do a for loop. for int index equals 1, index less than test scores dot length, index plus plus. So in here we're going to do an if statement. If test scores index is less than lowest, then lowest is going to be equal to test scores index. That's all there is to it. So then all we got to do is return lowest. Okay. Actually, let's take this out of here. Back this stuff out. Need to go to the end of our for loop and then put it in there. That's where it's supposed to go. If we put it in the for loop, it's going to mess things up on there because it'll return after the first time through it, and that's not what we want to do. Okay. So now what we want is to get the average. So it's going to have some variables here. Double total is going to be equal to 0, and then put them all on the same line here. Lowest and average. Okay. So if test scores dot length is less than 2, which means then we only had 2 and we removed the lowest one, or we had 1 and removed the lowest one and we don't have any anymore, then we do a system dot out dot println error you must have at, I'm going to this way put it on the next line, least 2 test scores. Okay. And then average equals, whoops, that goes inside there, sorry. Did that wrong. Average equals 0. Else, go double score, colon, test scores, total, plus equals score. Then we get out of the for loop. And lowest equals get lowest score, and then total minus equals lowest. Okay. And then average equals total divided by test scores dot length minus 1, because we subtracted off that the lowest score on there. Okay, so we're done with the else part of this. So we go down here and we return average. So to kind of go through this a little bit with you, here to the top, we declare a field named test scores. That's our field or attribute. It's used to reference a double array of test scores. In the constructor, it accepts an array of double S as an argument. Should be doubles as an argument. The array is passed into the score array parameter. Purpose of the constructor is to make the test scores field refer to a copy of the array that is passed into the score array parameter. Okay, so the first step in the process is creates an array of double at that is the size of score array.length and assigns the array's address to the test scores field. After this statement executes, the test scores field will reference a new array that is the same size as score array. Then the loop copies each element of score array into the array referred to by the test scores field. When this code is finished, the test scores field will reference an array that is a copy of the one that was passed into the score array parameter. Okay, we need to do it that way. We can't just do an equal sign because that would copy the address of them and it would mess things up. We need to actually copy the values into the new array that we're working with on this. Get lowest score. It finds the lowest value in the test scores array and returns the value. The get average method first determines whether there are less than 2 elements in the test scores array. Let me scroll this down a little bit so you can see the whole thing there. There we go. If that is the case, we cannot drop the lowest score, so an error message is displayed and the average variable is set to 0. Otherwise, the code calculates the average of the test scores with the lowest score dropped and assigns that value to the average variable. Then it returns the value of the average variable. So then what we're going to do is the code to calculate out the average. So we're going to create a new file on this. I'm going to do File, New File. This is going to be called Calc Average. Add the Java on there. Put it in the same folder as our grader. We're going to need a scanner to import. So import java.util.scanner. Oops, don't throw it on there. There we go. Okay, so let me go to our main. We have an integer variable num scores, and then we've got to need to create our scanner object. Okay, then we're going to ask how many test scores do you have? And then num scores will be equal to keyboard.next int. And create a object of our class, or let's see, no, an array, sorry, scores equals new double, and this is going to be num scores. Okay, then we'll do a if statement for int index equals 0, index less than num scores. index plus plus. We're going to do enter, score, hashtag, end quote plus. And then we're going to do index plus 1 plus quote, colon, space, quote, in parentheses. And then score, whoops. Score index will be equal to keyboard dot next double. Okay. Oh, it should be scores, not score. Let's do that. Scores. There we go. And these should be parentheses and not brackets. There. Makes everything better. Okay, so that is the for loop. So we're going to create our grader object. Grader, my grader equals new grader, passing in scores. Do a system.out.println. Your adjusted average is space quote. I'm going to go down to put a plus on here, go down to the next line. MyGrader.get average. And then do a print line here. Your lowest score was MyGrader.get lowest score. And then that's the end of the program. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to do 4 test scores. We're going to do a 100, a 100, a 40, and a 100. We do it this way because we get the 40 out of there, so the average should be 100 when we get done. So let's press enter. Average was 100, lowest score was 40. The easy way to test it to make sure it works. Now we could run it again. And this time we'll test it for, we'll put in 2 scores, and we'll do a 100 and a 50. And it comes back and says, oh, this should do the error message on there. Your adjusted average is 100, your lowest score was 50, which it should not have done because we only had 2 test scores in there. So I'm going to look over here. I think that's in the class here. If test scores.length is less than 2, okay, we had 2 test scores in there, so that may be why. So let's run it again. I thought that the less than 2 was after we removed the lowest. So I'm going to say 1 and then put that in as 89. Error, you must have at least 2 test scores, and there's your adjusted, and then the lowest score was 89. So, because we only had the 1. So, and I got a place in there where I misspelled have, right there. I can resave that then. Okay, so we got that working. I hope this really helps you out on working with classes more and working with arrays. Bye.